Greetings, friends. Reformed Stoic here. Here with an interesting video for you today. Straight down to business. It's not even dark outside. I got home from the gym not too long ago. You could say this is somewhat of a response to a comment, but it's more like a video that's inspired by a comment. A video of mine that's been getting a decent amount of attention compared to my other videos is my video that I'm a Sigma male, what that means. I believe that's the title. Basically a video about Sigma males that I made about 2 months ago. I watched over that video again last night because I've seen a lot of different comments trickling in on it over the last month or so. And it was a painful experience for me because of the way that I carried myself in that video and just the way that I trailed off, the sound of my voice. For whatever reason, I think I've been doing a way better job making videos. I've become a better speaker over the last couple of months. That was the first video that I did in this room. I don't know how much of an effect that really has or how much of a difference that really makes, but regardless, the content of the video, if you're able to get through the whole thing, maybe it doesn't come off as spurky to other people, but I can see that it does to some. But some people commented on the content and said that it's great content. There's definitely a couple of tangents. When I describe a metaphor, it took way too long. But I want to address some of my tics and some of the ways that maybe people perceive me, some things that I'm very conscious of. People have said in the past that I have a lack of self-awareness, and that's actually not the reality. Sometimes it takes watching back a video to notice things, but like I said, I think I've really been cleaning up my act these last couple of months. And the comment that I wanted to address is somebody saying, no, you're just neurodivergent. So, no to everything I said in that entire 37-minute testimony. No, none of the things you said. You're just neurodivergent. Here's a bunch of books of how to be worthy of people treating you with kindness is what it basically amounts to. I deleted those comments. I delete a lot of negative comments. If I don't find it constructive, I delete it. If your comment gets any sort of response, consider yourself lucky. It means that on some level you said something constructive. You've said something that carries some sort of merit. There's no reason to leave up insults and things of that nature, and they certainly don't merit a response. But let's talk about whether or not I'm autistic. And I think this video is going to be kind of like setting some sort of a bar. How do I explain this? This is kind of like starting a new leaf. This is kind of getting ready for the future and what's to come. Because I want to address this. And I think I've said a couple of times that I kind of consider myself maybe high-functioning autistic, but we're going to get to the bottom of this right now. I don't think that I have any sort of autism. Let me tell you about a couple of things that I got going for me. A very good memory, an impeccable memory, long-term, not quite as good short-term, but since I cut out the weed, that's been improving. And logical ability. I took Phil 102, which is your first logic course in philosophy. And then I took symbolic logic and reasoning, and I aced both of those classes. And I believe that had something to do with me being scouted by the FBI and offered to apply for an internship with the FBI at UNLV. I'm very logical. So when people tell me, no, you don't know what you're talking about, well, actually, I have a track record that shows that I have a very accurate perception, and I also have a very good memory. So either I'm lying to you, or you could say coping, trying to manipulate the way people feel as I'm trying to cover up a reality, or there's likely a reason that, people should consider some of the things that I say. Now, having said that, like I said, it was painful for me to watch that video I made about Sigma males. I don't know if I was just having an especially spurgy day, but I was talking about my life story. I was talking about experiences of betrayal and kind of summarizing my life experience, like having a bad time, dealing with mistreatment, dealing with betrayal. And I think that probably contributed to some of the way I carried myself in that video. So let's get down to business. I don't think that I'm autistic. If I have struggled with anything, I would not consider myself having anything, but I would put it like this. I struggle with narcissistic abuse syndrome, which has a lot of crossover symptoms with complex PTSD. That is what I believe causes my tics. Sometimes my voice is really high pitch kind of and grating, or sometimes I really hate the sound of my voice. I felt like I was speaking in fast forward in that video. There's a noise that a lot of people make on YouTube. A lot of people who at least try to sound intelligent, or maybe they are intelligent, it's this mouth opening noise. You really don't notice when you make it. You don't notice until you see the video. I hate that noise. One person commented on it. It was somebody who really doesn't like me, at least from the sounds of it. But I hate that noise too. I've noticed when other people do it, and I've tried really hard not to do it. I made that noise every freaking 10 seconds in that video. That video was an absolute dumpster fire. But this isn't really about that. This is me explaining to you why I think I have narcissistic abuse syndrome. And yeah, it kind of gives me an opportunity to stick it to everybody who gave me this bullshit. It started at the home, okay? We're not going to go into great details about that, but let's just say one of the parents was a malignant narcissist, while one of the other parents was more of an enabler. Or maybe at times I've seen evidence of them being a covert narcissist. These people both had abusive upbringings as well, my parents. It started at the home. As time went on, it developed into some toxic friendships that I've had sprinkled throughout my childhood and my young adult years and into my 20s. Now, what's the difference between narcissistic abuse and bullying? The narcissistic abuse comes from people who are supposed to be your friends on paper. When I moved into the house that I lived in for the majority of my childhood, the log house on Mallard, for anybody who's keeping score, I had a neighbor who lived across the street who ended up being a friend of mine all throughout the rest of elementary school, middle school, high school, and into my 20s. This is somebody I've talked about on my channel before, but I don't mention names anymore out of some minuscule amount of respect that I have for people. Or it's more just about being respectful, not really having respect for people. This guy I have most certainly identified as a narcissist. And narcissistic abuse tends to involve gaslighting. Gaslighting, in layman's terms, is just telling someone that they're wrong. And it can also, it's more specifically telling someone that they're wrong about the way that they feel. And what I've run into so many times over my life is, hey, I don't like the way that you're treating me. And then oftentimes either the person who's treating me that way or some person who's enabling someone else's abuse will say, there's something wrong with you that you feel that way. You are wrong to feel that way. A lot of times when confronting someone who is mistreating you, they'll say, man, you're taking things too seriously. Dude, I wasn't being serious. Calm down, bro. Okay? The amount of these people that I have come across in my hometown alone is absolutely baffling. I think it has something to do with there being a military base in my town. I've noticed that a lot of these people come from military families, whether they be Air Force or Army or Navy. My father actually was Navy. And there's a lot of different tangents and directions I could take in this video, but I would say that I was raised to roll over for narcissistic abuse in my own household, which ultimately groomed me to accept mistreatment from narcissistic friendships. And then there just happens to be an overwhelming abundance of narcissists in my hometown. Now, you could expand the term narcissist to dark triad. Me not being especially crazy of psychology for a number of different reasons, I would say that these people are basically just... It's too far to say that they're bad people. It's too far to say that they're evil. But these people are behaving poorly. And the absolute guiding light of what my faith amounts to these days is that narcissistic behavior is the opposite of everything that Christ teaches you to be. Treating others the way you want to be treated. Narcissists don't do that. In fact, they specifically don't do that because they will treat you like you're mistreating them. They will perceive it as mistreatment for you to expose their abuse. They will roll their eyes and laugh when you call their behavior abuse. I dealt with this behavior, I dealt with this kind of narcissistic abuse so consistently, for so long, from so many people, that I believe, in my educated opinion, that is what has contributed to my... One time, the system labeled me with an adjustment disorder, which really, I think, is kind of laughable. I wouldn't really consider that, like, a big deal. But like I said, I really take everything that the system says about your mental health with a grain of salt. I take everything the system says with a grain of salt, but y'all know me at this point. So, I would say that all of the mistreatment that I experienced from childhood through high school did not prepare me for my adult life living on the East Coast. On the East Coast, I met a number of, you could say, dark triad. I think that's where the Machiavellian comes in. I even heard, like, a girl who was dating a guy who was my roommate. She said something about how she likes Machiavellian guys. And I definitely believe his specific kind of behavior was Machiavellian. That's trying to publicly assert dominance over people. And it's funny how if you aggressively confront some of these people, sometimes they just fold up. Like, sometimes it's a bizarre kind of coping. It's like a fake persona. Like, that is a perfect example of someone who has a good bark, but no bite, is the Machiavellian. Now, you could be a big, strong alpha male guy who can kick everybody's ass, and you could be a Machiavellian. The bottom line of a Machiavellian is they like to publicly assert dominance. They like it. They get some sort of a pleasure from laying it down thick right in front of you. Like, when we were deciding the rooms we were going to live in the house, he's like, I'm taking this room. It's already decided. I'd much rather fight, you or you than him. I mean, before we even moved in the house, we didn't even really know each other that well yet. He was talking about, like, fighting people for this room. And I really felt like it was a bait and switch because he never acted that way before. All of a sudden, this guy is, like, talking this big game. And, I mean, that I could go on and on and on in terms of examples. But the point I want to make about the whole dark triad and then mainly the narcissist thing, I've mentioned many times, and I mentioned in the Sigma Male video that I kind of take part in the Chosen Ones community. I am not sure what people in the Chosen Ones community think of me. I haven't really heard any feedback from them. Sometimes I feel like I'm kind of a dark horse or maybe a black sheep in the Chosen Ones community, which is kind of funny because the Chosen Ones go on and on and on and on and on about how people aren't accepted. Well, I feel like maybe I'm not accepted by the Chosen Ones community, but that might just be the way I feel. Nobody's really said anything to me that makes me feel that, but I think I just made that mouth noise. These people talk about narcissists. There's kind of this working modern definition of narcissist that the internet is using. And I see these people oftentimes as pioneers. And I have gained so much more insight from their commentary than I have from psychologists or from psychology. So people might want to check me, like, actually a narcissist is this, or actually a psychopath is that. I admittedly use the working internet definition of narcissism because whatever that is a very real thing. And trying to hone in on what it is in as simple terms as possible so we don't get caught in a tangent. They're just people who treat people poorly. They won't accept confrontation. And the only way you ever deal with a narcissist is by getting away from them. That's the only way you ever deal with a narcissist. And maybe not everybody's a narcissist. Maybe some people just have narcissistic behavior. A lot of the comments that I delete are narcissistic behavior. And I am following the method. The tried and true method, a video that I've thought about making for a long time, is there's nothing more powerful than ignoring people. There's nothing more powerful than ignoring things. A lot of these people, they just want your attention. I mean, that's kind of the bottom line of the narcissist. And people are like, a narcissist is someone who thinks very, very, very highly of themselves. Well, in this way that I was tempted to say is kind of abstract, but it's really not. It might just take a little bit of reasoning for people to understand how this overinflated ego drives you to act this way. You feel threatened by other people's merits. Like, if anybody else in the room is getting compliments, is getting praise, you have to try to diminish that to protect your own ego. I think almost everybody's boomer parents, this is something you hear from parents all the time on why people bully people. They're treating you that way because they are insecure. That's basically narcissism, okay? And I'm not saying that it doesn't line up with the psychological evaluation of what a narcissist is. I'm just fully admitting that I'm much more interested in the working internet Chosen Ones definition of narcissist, which I think is very accurate to the psychological definition. But a lot of what psychology does is try to cover for these people. I mean, how many people get diagnosed with narcissism? Not many, because they don't seek out therapy, because they have good lives. Because this world is basically built to suit the lifestyle and the actions of the narcissist, and it's all biblical. In Psalms, it talks about how the wicked thrive in this world. They're worldly people. They're worldly people, and Christ tells you not to be of the world. And my entire faith at this point hones in on that. Christ said that the way to damnation is wide. Those are all the narcissists and worldly people. That's the majority of people. So anytime somebody says, oh, this is normal, I had a conversation with a family member who wasn't one of my parents, by the way, in a car ride where I was talking about narcissists, and they said, oh, well, it's pretty average. It's normal. And then they tried to appeal to like evolutionary biology and Darwinism, which is really funny how that works. Oh, well, it's okay to be a narcissist because we evolved that way. Right. Wow. So we have this dichotomy where Christians try to say, no, yeah, the majority of people act this way. because the path to damnation is wide. But the straight and narrow path to salvation, well, those are all the people who follow Christ. And in terms of like the law of God being written on people's hearts, I would say it's people who are just living what Christ taught, in the 8 Beatitudes. Blessed are the merciful, blessed are the meek, blessed are those who thirst for justice, blessed are those who suffer for justice' sake. One of them is righteousness, one of them is justice. I always get them mixed up. Those who thirst for justice, those who suffer for righteousness. One or the other. I think it's suffer for justice, thirst for righteousness. But anyway, and this has actually led me to think that maybe I'm a Marcionite. And if I have some sort of an excuse for that, if that's not the case, I am sick and tired of people trying to use the Old Testament to undo the teachings of Christ. Like, a lot of Christians get really triggered when I try to check people on, hey, well, Christ told you to treat people the way that you want to be treated. And Christ told you to judge lest not, yea, be judged. Pick the log out of your own eye. Pick the speck out of your brother's eye. There's people who are just really like, but wait a minute, don't forget about bashing the babies' heads on the rocks in the Old Testament. And, not for the enemies of God in the Old Testament. And, don't forget about, because God killed all the babies in Egypt. Like, what Christ said is just what Christ said. Keep in mind, he was having a discussion with a group of people who were there. So nobody's flipping through books like, Deuteronomy. No, Christ was having a discussion with people who were there, and nobody was reading any books. So the definition that you get from reading Matthew 7, from reading the 8 Beatitudes, is the correct definition. And I'm so sick and tired because I see what people are trying to do with the Old Testament. Basically what I've seen is that you either favor the Old Testament, where it's like, rah, 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 kill everybody in the promised land and dominate and protect my tribe, or you favor the teachings of Christ, which is benevolence and just kind of being a good person and being good to people. And there's a lot of Christians out there who seem to have a problem with that, who seem to have a problem with thinking that Jesus told you to be good to people. And basically, they have a problem with everything Jesus said. You show your love for me by your love for one another. Treat others the way you want to be treated. And I also really like in Galatians from Paul, when he talks about the fruits of the flesh versus the fruits of the Spirit. I'll just randomly throw that in there. But I know people didn't necessarily want to get a Bible lesson from me. But we'll see how things move. We'll see how things go moving forward. It might not be Yahweh's fault. I could be misunderstood, but I gotta tell you, man, like, I'm just really tired of hearing the way people preach the Old Testament, because they try to use it to excuse poor behavior and treating people poorly. And so when it comes to the conclusion in this video, because we're 23 minutes, we can probably end this in the next couple of minutes. I have a very good memory. I never really elaborated why that was important to what I was saying. My childhood friend who lived across the street, who shall not be named, we had a little chit-chat in the woods last time I was back home, in Kodiak, Alaska. And I started talking about some things that I remember from the past, and he's like, there's a really interesting study that I saw on Facebook that a lot of people's memories aren't even real. And I was like, hey, buddy, I remember my life. Like, he was basically trying to use this study to gaslight me, like, you don't even have any memories. And he told me that he doesn't remember anything about... I just made the mouth noise, but I think that was a good time to make it. Sometimes you can make that noise. It's a nice little accent from time to time. I think that part of the reason he said he couldn't remember anything from our past is because, I don't know, I grew to be like a lot bigger than him. I was a lot bigger than he remembered me being, and he kind of seemed like he was out of shape and didn't really do anything other than like smoking weed and gallivanting around the woods. But anyway, my memories seem to cause problems for people. People seem to have problems with the fact that I remember things. I remember a lot of mistreatment, and I'm not saying like I can beat everybody up. That's not what it's about. That's not what it's about. But part of what I remember is that I was always very charismatic. I always had a lot of friends. And I'm not trying to brag. I'm just saying, like, I fit in. People liked me. I made people laugh. I was oftentimes the life of the party. Now, I made a video about gesture maxing, and I told you I had some gesture maxing behavior. But this is something that I'm glad I didn't lean on in the video, and we'll just mention it kind of on the way out. A lot of the kind of narcissistic bullying, narcissism, some of these people weren't my friends. A lot of my early mistreatment came from the fact that I was small, and later it was because I was bald and still small. It's a lot more about the way that I look. I don't want to sit here and say that I think I'm ugly. I will say, maybe regretting it later, I just think I have shit genetics, man. I started going bald when I was like 17. I always had a bad hairline. Somebody said that one time somebody's parent commented on my hairline when I was young. I have had some rough crosses to bear, and we're not going to get caught in a big tangent. But a lot of people have problems with men saying that, hey, you know what? I have been mistreated because of the way that I look. Oh, well, you know, I know a guy, like, Danny DeVito, bro. Just Danny DeVito it, bro. Like, and this is just part of kind of what fueled some mistreatment from people. And then it kind of became evident that I had some talents. By the way, thank you for all the kind words on my latest song. I don't want this video to overshine my new song. It's called Milton. It's the video before this one. I'd much appreciate it if people check it out. Felt really good. It's been a while since I made a song. Production much better than the last song. Cringing from the last song's production, even though people liked that song too, but it's tough. No more tangents. I remember my life. I was charismatic. People gave me a hard time over being small, being bald. There was moments where I was around toxic groups of people in my hometown, Kodiak, Alaska, where sometimes all people would really talk about is me being short and bald. And some of the friendships became extremely toxic. And if I ever tried to confront any of the behavior, I would be gaslit. I believe that from years of gaslighting from my family, which doesn't only include my parents at this point, let's just say some people who are young in my family have grown up to follow in my family's footsteps. And it extends to extended family as well. A lot of gaslighting and narcissistic abuse from my family. A lot of gaslighting and narcissistic abuse from people I grew up with. And some mistreatment from people I met on the East Coast. Ultimately, the best friendships that I ever had were on the East Coast. But I met some people who were very powerful. I met people who came from well-to-do, rich families. They went to private schools. They did really good at life right out the gate. By the way, I looked up a couple of these people last night, and I realized that they just kept getting degrees. You know, I went to a music school. They got their music degree, toured for a while, tried to do some things, all while never stressing out about money. And they're like, okay, well, I need a real career. I'm just going to go get another degree. I'm just going to go to another high-level, expensive school and get another degree. And I checked a couple of people, and bro, this is what rich people do. They can go to school as much as they want. They got connections to these good schools. They got good resumes. They never spurg out because they're rich and they have good lives. And they just keep getting degrees. They just keep getting degrees. And then, you know, this guy moved to frickin' like San Diego or LA, and he works in tech now. He's a frickin' he's a computer engineer programmer, and he has all these accreditations. And these people just kind of can't lose, bro. But that's the only really kind of negative thing. There's nothing wrong with being like rich, bro. There's nothing wrong. But I came from a really rough town. I dealt with a lot of mistreatment. I had a very dysfunctional upbringing, and I had a lot of problems when I moved to the East Coast. And things didn't really go well for me on the East Coast in a lot of different ways. In a couple of ways it did. I lacked a lot of wisdom, and I just wanted to... Okay, 30. I couldn't tell if that was 38 or 30. I just wanted to tell you guys, man, that all of my tics, flaws, if I don't carry myself the best way sometimes, like in the past on streams and on videos... Oh, we'll go ahead and just mention in short that the narcissistic abuse continued online. And I think a lot of people know what I'm referring to there. I've even dealt with narcissistic abuse from groups like the Neighborhood Watch Group in Kodiak, even though the person who ran that group didn't even live in Kodiak. I've dealt with smear campaigns. I dealt with a smear campaign from my drum teacher when I was in high school. He was going around telling people that I only bashed and could play loud, and I could only play metal, and I wasn't musical. And somebody came up to me and was like, man, I heard you playing those congas at the bar. Man, you're really musical. I'm surprised, because your drum teacher said that you only bash and play metal. And I heard about all these people gossiping about... I heard about him going around doing the smear campaign about me. See, I start stuttering my words when I talk about this stuff, because I have definitely been traumatized by a lot of this mistreatment. That definitely really happened, and that I definitely really remember. I heard about this grown man in his 40s going on a smear campaign about a 17-year-old boy. And I confronted him about it. And, he turned out to be complete dead weight moving forward in my life. And there's a lot more that I can say, and people who pay attention to my channel know there's a lot more that I can say. But in conclusion, I don't think I'm autistic. I know some autistic people. I actually, in my extended family, have some people who have Asperger's and autism. I was always very charismatic. I was always had a lot of friends. I was always very social and outgoing. For whatever reason, for lack of time, I don't want to keep expanding, but I think part of the reason was people were threatened by me. I think I, low-key, was one of the more interesting, intelligent, witty people in a lot of rooms that I was in when I was growing up. And a lot of people, remember, being narcissistic, their ego was threatened by it. And there was some low-hanging fruit. I was a small guy, and then I had problems with my hair. Once upon a time, somebody told me that you can't play drums because you're too short. Oh, you're a bald rapper? Somebody said you can't rap because you're bald, like Tupac. You can't play drums because you're short. And people act like I'm being a bleeding heart. Or here's a lot of the stuff that people say to me when I say this kind of stuff. That was a long time ago, bro. Why don't you move on? I am moving on. Like I said, this video is kind of a checkpoint before I move on into moving forward in my channel, doing things just doing what I do. I'm not going to say what I was about to say. Being one of the greatest rappers who ever lived. Oh, I'm just kidding, dude. I'm feeling myself after that song. Thank you for the support. I'd love to get a team. I'd love to get people mixing my song. Here's how it works, man. People send me beats. I can make a ton of songs. I maybe build a little vocal booth in my closet, send the tracks. Somebody else mixes and masters it. And then I have some knowledgeable people in the team who maybe are connected to the industry somehow. And they're like, hey, these are your best songs. That's how we do it. It's hard for me. It's hard being one-man army, bro. And it's frustrating. That's why you make a lot of songs. Because, when I make one song every 3 months, sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's trash. Sometimes it's good lyrics with a bad mix. Sometimes it's a good mix on a mediocre song. You can't win them all. And I know a little bit about how things work behind the scenes. And, that's kind of how it works, bro. So... And I know people usually want money. The mixers, masters want money. The beat people want money. I mean, it's not like I can't consider doing that, but sure, it'd be nice if I just had a team, dude. Bottom line. Anyway, that's it. Not autistic. I have struggled with narcissistic abuse syndrome because I've just dealt with a lot of narcissists in my life, bro. And I think where I was leaving off was, oh, bro, why don't you just move on? That's in the past. Dude, you're obsessed with the past. Dude, all you do is think about the past. Stop talking about it, bro. Stop exposing us, bro. No, I'm doing good. Things are going well. And that's the reality. I remember my life, despite what some Facebook study said. I'm a very logical person. I'm not wrong about what I'm saying. I have dealt with an absolutely immeasurable, massive amount of narcissistic abuse in my life, and I believe that it has caused some dysfunction in my character, in the way that I carry myself. I'm not saying that it should be a get out of jail free card for every wrong that I've ever done, but most of the worst things that I've ever done, all the worst things I've ever done, are pretty far in the past at this point. And if anybody's interested in understanding who I am, that's a big part of it. In my lyrics, you hear me talk about betrayal a lot. There are a lot of mentions of me being betrayed. It's very real. And in my video on being a Sigma male, I said that we are living in a mass betrayal the likes that the world has never seen. And I still believe that. I thought maybe this video would be kind of like a continuation of the Sigma male topic. All I'm going to say about that, what a lot of people have said, is a Sigma male would never call himself a Sigma male. A Sigma male does whatever the fuck he wants. So, I admit that video is cringe. I think if you can get through it, you might get something out of it, even though I kind of come off as an unhinged, broken, awkward, cringy mess in that video. Shout outs to Sean Strickland. It's actually difficult for me to listen to him talk because I can tell that he's dealt with abuse in his life. It makes broken people, man. And I say I've struggled with it, and not that I have it, because I think I'm on the winning end of this battle. So if anybody cares, that's the reality. Nobody can take that away from me, man. And from this point on, I think God's going to guide me to some good places. Thanks for the support, guys. God bless. Until next time.